Hey everyone, so let's see. Let me just verify my sound and then we'll start. Okay. Yeah, I missed actually the sound once. Let me see. Okay, sounds good. Great. So today we will continue with forms. So we'll create the profile form and let me just change one setting on my mic. Real. Hello. Yeah. Oh, sorry. The Slack. Just need to quit the Slack. Yeah, and we are good. So today we'll continue with the profile form. If you remember last time we were creating the form using form builder service, and let's see how far we reached. So yeah, so we were at geolocation. We created this nested control, and then I think we also were able to see this. Yeah. So and then there was a question. There was a question why we are getting this user ID as null, email as null. So I found the issue because this service actually there are two types of observable, right? So there are observables which can return a synchronous value. For example, if it has a behavior subject or replay subject which has a default value. So in that case, of course, we can actually define, in case you have an asynchronous like behavior subject or something, you can define a property which says require sync true. But this one is an API call, right? So this cannot be synchronous. So this has to be asynchronous. And even if I enable this by using require sync true, we will get an exception. So it will throw an exception that okay, this stream is actually not in a synchronous stream, and we will not get anything. So you can see it says observable did not emit synchronously. So in case, of course, you will also try to, let's say, use Signal APIs in future, and you come across this issue. So this is how it works. So you cannot just use, or you cannot just read your signals like directly here. So what we'll do is we will actually just use the old way of doing it, and we'll see how. I'll just replace this with the default values. So this is how you can actually define the initial value. So we already have here, here. Let's remove this. And there was one more question, why we need form builder service, why we cannot just do using form group. So the thing is, of course, this is available, but it looks more cleaner using this way because you can define, you don't have to write new form control every time. We can actually just define it like this. Also, I mean, there are multiple ways to define it. Of course, this is the one. In case we need to pass validators, this is how we can also pass. So we can actually put it in an array. The first value becomes the default value, and then we can pass validators dot required, right? So you don't have to like write a lot of code to do this. That's why we use form builder to minimize the code which we write. Cool. So now we will not see at least the null. We'll see, okay, this is blank values. And now let's start binding the form. So what we have seen is using reactive forms, we already create the form and then we bind it. So here we can actually use oh, this form, right? So let's find the form. And the first thing which we need is form group. We saw it last time, right? When we created the login form. And we already have our form, which is a file form. So we'll say, okay, hey, this is my form group. And this is equals to file form, and then we don't have anything for we don't have any submit action, so we'll do that later. It says there is an error. It says form can't bind to form group since it isn't actually a known property of form. So why we are getting this error? Because remember we have to import, so we have to go ahead and import reactive forms. Hey Pankaj, good evening. I mean it's night for you. Uh, reactive forms module. And someone on my last stream, one of my friend on my last stream said good morning, and I was confused why he said good morning. And then I realized, oh, so it was already like 2 a.m. in the morning for you, for him actually in India. So okay, I got it. Great. So we also need a few other APIs. So we'll say, okay, we need mat form filled module. We need mat input module. We need mat button module, and is it this is okay right now. And in case we need checkboxes, we can do that later. And now we have first name, last name. Let's see if it is correct one. So we have ID, email, phone. So ID, we don't need to show ID because ID will be actually read only. So we'll change that. So ID, so we have email, and I think there was first name, last name, but it was not directly part of the input control. So we'll say, okay, this is email. We want to show first name, last name, but we have to access actually that's the nested value inside the API. So you can see it says name and then first name, last name. So okay, where is this gone? Yeah, here. So we have name, first name, last name. So we'll take that, but let's find the values which we have. So phone, and also this is email. So we'll remove this because it's already there. And then we have address, but you can see, right? I mean, this will not work. So I'll just remove this button because, of course, this is not, this will throw an error because we don't have any action defined. But here, you see, you start getting an error. So it says, hey, cannot find control with name city, cannot find control with name state, because, of course, it does not exist directly inside this. So we have to actually create another form. So if you see this, so it's actually another form. We can actually see this from our object as well. This is another form. We know that. So we can, what we can do is we can wrap it inside another div. So here I'll create a div here, and we can have only one form group, but we can have multiple form group name. So I can here say, hey, this is my form group name. This is string value. Yep, this will be address. And now once we define the controls, so let's move them into here. So we have city, street number, city. So we should remove this one. We have zip code. We have city, street number. Why it's like that? City, street number, and zip code. Okay, because this is international. Okay. I'm still like thinking about the Indian zip code, and because we don't have anything called number, right? So we just have zip code. Uh, so we are inside this div. We have to make sure that we are inside this form group name. Otherwise, we will start getting an exception that this control does not exist. So city, uh, street, number over here. We have zip code. So I'll say, okay, this is zip code, number, street, and perfect. Let's see. Let's verify now, and we should not get any exception. If we get any exception, it means we are doing something wrong with the way we are binding this form. So now we can see there is no error here in the console. Let's enter something. So I'll say, okay, oh my God, my address is visible here. How can I disable it? So do we have any extension? Uh, Disable complete. Click on Chrome menu settings and autofill section. Chrome settings. Auto, yeah, fill addresses and more. Again, okay. So hope it's not. Yeah, I'll probably edit the videos. Yeah. City, Hamburg, and street. Let's say Hamburg. And you can see like all the values which we enter is actually available here. So zip code, number, is number here. Okay, here is the number. We can see, okay, all the values are correct. Let's enter the email, let's enter the phone number, but in our case, actually, we are getting this data already. We have to bind it. So we'll do that, but let's complete the form right now. And what are the next field? Name, first name. So we already have phone, email, username, password, which we don't need to bind. So let's do name, first name. And we'll go back to our component.ts and here, right? So we have name and we'll say there's another group, and here we can say first name and last name, and we have to bind it. So now we know how to bind nested forms. So what we have to do is we have to just make sure that we have a div and that form group name is name, and then inside this we can actually create first name and last name and make sure that div matches why unexpected closing tag div. Let's see, because we have missing form mat form field here, and it should work now. So let's see, we have our form with first name, last name. So it says name, last name does not exist. Name, first name does not exist. Why? So name, first name, last name. What I have done, so name, first name, last name, form group name, first name. Okay, see, spelling, first name, it's small, and then I mentioned capital. Okay, cool. So the form looks good so far. Of course, we will change it so it will have the entire width. We can just borrow it from the login form which we have created. Now we are left with the last section, which is geolocation. So you can see geolocation again has lat long. So let's add that. So it's part of address. Yep, it's part of address. And we already have this. So now remember we have one form group name, and then we again address has geolocation. So what will happen is again we have to make sure that there is a div which is wrapping this form group name. That's okay. This is form group name is equals to geolocation, and then here we have to create mat form field lat long, and this is okay. Let's verify. We should not get any error here, but if we get, it means okay, there is something wrong. So it says error, so it says address geolocation, and again spelling mistake, so lat long. So I'm just uh, relying too much on uh Copilot. So it says let long lng. Great. So we have lat long as well. So we are almost ready with the form. The thing is we have to actually go ahead and two things. So if you see, I mean, this is actually an profile form. So by default, it shouldn't be enabled, right? I mean, there are two ways. I mean, we can keep it enabled and then have some save button, uh, or there is another way where you can put an edit button. On click of edit button, your forms becomes enabled, and then you can edit the values. So this is up to you how you want to do it. I'll show you probably both ways how we can do that. So here you can pass some extra values to the form group. Let's see what are there. So we have update on validators. Do we need anything from here? No, right now, no. Okay. Uh, so here we can actually do few things. Let's bind the form data first. I'll call a method. I'll just say, okay, this is load or load profile. Makes sense. Load profile. Yeah. Let's see. I'll create a function and just to check, right? If we still get the values here. So if you try to read the user information here, this dot user, which is of type user. First thing, let's verify. I mean, whether we are able to get the data, and we'll call this as. Hey Pradum, hi, how are you? This user or undefined, yeah, because still it can be undefined. But let's see. I'll just pass it as or undefined just in case. Let's see. I'm not sure if we'll get the value because as per the docs, I mean this is not a synchronous event, so we can get undefined. Yeah, we are getting undefined, so it's okay. I mean I have to understand how it works, but there are other ways we can do it, and one of them is I'll go with observable, and let's see. So here I can do in multiple ways. So one of them is this. So I what I'm doing is I'm calling the get user service, which we already have. So if you see, this is the same service which I'm calling. I'm doing subscribe, and then I'm patching the value to the user. We'll talk about what this patch value means, and let's see how our form looks like. So hey, we have the data, and why it worked. I mean, so focusing on Golang, nice. I mean, yeah, I'm doing good. Uh, Busy week so far. I mean, too many things this week. So yeah, hopefully next week will be much better. Let's understand this. So here what we are doing is we are getting the data from our service, and then we are patching this data to our form. And how it works is it works on the property. So whatever properties it can match with our form. So if you're wondering where we are defining the property, this is the metadata, right? This is the interface, we can say. And we actually, if you remember, we actually took it from the same API which we created. So it's the same property with the same metadata. So it will just match and everything and just patch the values there. There is another API called set value, which is a little bit strict. So in set value, you have to make sure that you are getting all the values of the form. So if you even miss a single value, here you can say, hey, cannot find form control with username because I'm just probably missing the name. Is it? First name, last name. What is this? First name, last name. This is interesting. So somehow it says it's not able to match this metadata. So first name and last name, sorry. So first name, last name, and we have first name, last name. And what patch value does, it will never complain. I mean, just to show you, right? So in case it matches, it will bind the data, it will not throw an exception. So just think what you need, right? I mean, what uh, if you need to take the very strict, whether you want your form to be very strict, I'm not sure why it actually failed in set value, because first name and last name were there. So maybe some metadata issue or some signature which is not matching. So safe bet is go with patch value. So because we know that in case there are some missing properties, it may actually just ignore it, because you cannot always trust the APIs, right? I mean, they may just drop some controls and then it starts to break. So, and in case you don't need all the values to be rendered, just play safe, go with patch value. So this is how you can load and bind all this data to your form. And let's make this form same as our login form, because if you remember, our login form is actually a little bit responsive, and thanks to the CSS which we copied from the documentation, right? So I'll just put it here. I'll just say, okay, this is example form. So here I'll say this is class, and it should make our form width 100%. So, Pradyumna, where from where you are learning Golang? I mean, are you referring to any courses, or are you just going through the documentation? So let's copy this. And also, by the way, I forgot to ask. I mean, are you like you were looking for some opportunities, job opportunities? How's that working? And we have, okay. So why this closing div is giving me an issue? Because mat form filled, mat form filled. Okay, I made some mistakes somewhere, but here. So it's closing, not the opening. So just should not add it here. And let's see. Great. So our form looks nice. And then if you remove this, of course, you have your validation also. Like we just added some validations. So we are able to display the entire form. Somehow this is small, this is bigger. And we can change the type, right? I mean, you can also make, for example, if you know lat long is type number, you can always go ahead and say, hey, this is type number, and same for this one. And there was a place called, there was a field called number. So we can say, okay, this is number, and then we'll start getting the field as number. You can see that. Yeah. So, right, you can just use up arrow, down arrow, same with this one. And you can also place labels. For example, Angular material, let's go there and let's go to input. You have option to put label like this one, right? So we can actually add, let's go to example, and then here we can say mat label. And we can say this is first name. So it will like display the label as well. Because Angular material is built keeping in mind that you will have good accessibility accessibility thing. So I'm not sure why it's not coming. Same, right? So okay, so probably picked up the another one, clearable input. No, this is the same. So we have to put mat label, and then is there anything else? No. Okay, I mean it should have worked. Why not? Mat label. Ah, see, always refer documentation, because I'm putting this out of mat form field. That's why. And now it should be okay. So yeah, you have first name, and if you noticed an interesting thing, there is a star here, and you see it actually becomes red. So again, thanks to Anglo Material, you don't have to do all this. They just add it for you. So yeah, this is how you can actually add label as well. Wanted to show one more thing before we move ahead. So what I will do is I will clear this data, the unnecessary data which we have. I'll just remove this. So we can see our form clearly. Great. So we have our data with the form values, which we are getting from the API. What I wanted to show you is an example of adding controls dynamically. So let's say we have one more field where why settle with one field. Let's see an example where you can add your multiple addresses, right? So we have one address right now. What in case I need multiple addresses? So can we do that? Yes, we can do that. Let's go ahead and try it out. Of course, this will not match our metadata. I mean, this will be a but different from what we have in the API. But just to see as an example, right? So what we can do is I'll just comment this out address. Rather than this, I'll create another address field. I mean, I'll keep this as it is because we want to use it. And rather than creating a group, this is where it becomes interesting. I'll say array. So in array, once you define this as an array, you can actually go ahead and add the array of controls. It means if I define the address object, I can go ahead and add multiple address object. But how to make it possible? Like how to do that? So we already know that, okay, it needs to be a group inside this. And here, it has to be an array because it's not an object. So I'll just remove this and do it again because, of course, otherwise we'll just keep getting all this. Uh, and I mean, the squiggly lines, that's squiggly. And what we'll do is now we know that this .fp.group is nothing but this. We can actually copy all this. Let's undo and then copy. So we copy from here to here, right? So let's do this. You see, now this is an array, of course. So our form will start breaking again. So it'll say, hey, this is actually I'm not able to find any control where it's the control is address geolocation lat because now the address is an array. It's not a normal control. So let's go back. Let's see what we have to make here. Again, I'll keep this because we have to actually finally use this one, right? So here again, what we will do is as we have an array and we have seen how to actually handle an array, right? We know that we can use something known as ng-for in case we have list of values which we need to bind. We saw that in example during routing, right? So when we were building all these routes dynamically. So here we'll say a div. And now rather than saying form group name, I'll say this is form array name. And the array name is, of course, address. Now, once we reached address name, now it's an array. So we need something to need something which can hold. So what we can do is we can again create a div, not save. And here, uh, let's see. Hmm. So we are saying, okay, the profile form which we have, profile form, dot get address and controls. Like so, it says, okay, this can be null because of course we can maybe we can simplify it rather than actually doing this because there is a better way of not writing all this and then just get using a getter value, which is available in docs as well. So whenever you are referring nested forms or like using form arrays, just refer the docs. I mean, they will tell you that how you can do it in a better way. So here, generally, the best practice is actually creating an alias because it enables you to do a lot of things. Because after this, I mean, once we create the form, what we are going to do is we are actually going to add or modify this array as well. And this is where this getter becomes very handy or comes very handy. Uh, so let's do this. I'll say this is address, and this is form array. So I'll just import form array from here, and then we have to make sure that we put the address here. And now, rather than actually doing all this, where let address is equals to this, we can see an example here. So rather than actually doing this, we can just say, okay, we can say this dot controls. So here we can add or get our use our getter value. So we can say, hey, give me address dot controls, and this should be an comma, not, and this is fine. And I'll remove this form group. I mean, we have to use this, but not here. And let's format the document again. So now we are saying, okay, for each control in this address array, should we call this addresses? I mean, this is plural, right? Just to differ it from this address. So you'll say, okay, this is addresses. Hmm. So now we are inside the loop. So let's see where we have reached so far, right? So if I go back to my form and see this, so I'm here and then I'm in this array. Now I can go ahead and access these controls. But before this controls, there is a group, there is a form. But how to access this form? I mean, the question is how? I mean, because we, in this case, where we had just like an address as a group, we had a key. We had a key that, okay, from this key, we can actually identify that we are in this form. But if you talk about addresses, addresses already have a key. You have to just think about it. So if you remember, addresses have an index, right? So address is the key. So we already have a key, we just have to use it. This is where this index becomes handy. So in ng for loop in Angular, you have access to the index as well. It means what I can do is I can put form group name equals to index. So it's my key, it's my form group. And then here I'm just accessing the control. So I'm saying city, street, zip code, and then we have number. I'll just actually, I should have copied from here, but it's okay. Let's see if you're right. So here we have number, yep, number, and then we have geolocation lat long. I think it should work. Add form group where, no, we are actually in, so Ali, we are talking about array now. So we have this fb dot array. So where we can actually add, remove dynamically, controls dynamically, and we saw the example of form group. Cool. So it says value for each is not a function, form array dot patch value, because now it's failing on this line because my form's metadata has changed. Here, the address is actually an array of addresses. So I'll just comment this line for time being because we are seeing this an example. So I'll come back and then use this. So I don't want to delete some code. But yep, this is okay, right? And to see this, to see the form, let's go ahead and comment this out because uh, okay. So if you see here, yeah, yeah. So you can see address is actually an array of controls, but here it is just a single control. Why? How to add controls and remove controls. That's what we will do now. Let's see how actually how easier is the API. to actually remove controls. So rather than actually doing this here, we need to add an array, right? So we need to, what we can do is we can actually say, hey, I can create an method called add address, which can return. So this can actually return a new control being added. So here I can say this dot address dot push, and it will add a new control, the same metadata, right? So which we have here. So I can remove this, and then I can just call this dot add address. Okay, so let's verify again. Okay, something changed. Something changed. So we have, let's verify. I'll just put this group. So here we can say this dot address dot push dfb dot group, and remove this, just this one, and let's do this dot and address, and should be add written because no, I'm doing wrong here. So this because it's an array. So I think I should this dot and address. This should be okay now. Let's see. Hmm. Cannot read properties, undefined reading value. Which value is this? Profile form dot value. Why? Okay, something has changed. Looks like get addresses cannot this dot addresses. Doing right now. Oh, why? What's okay? Let's see what I'm doing wrong here. So this is fine. Yeah, that should be push. This is alias dot push, right? So and then I'm pushing a new form group here. Ah, oh my god. Oh my god. Okay, so just my mistake, my mistake. So here, I can actually just do this. So I just don't have to actually add directly into this control. I can just return form control, and then this works. Yeah. So it works now because what I was doing was I was just pushing into this array. So it's okay. Sometime you yeah, this is live coding. So okay, so now we are returning a new control, or rather than actually saying add address, we can say mm, prepare address control or address form, right? So it makes more sense rather than just adding, because we are actually not adding anything here. So now, okay, so we got up to this form. Now let's go ahead and add the controls dynamically. Like, so let's do that. So here I'll just make some changes. First, I will add a button. So here I'll say a button, and this button will not be of type submit for sure. So I'll say, okay, this is type not submit, but type button. And on click of this button, I want to do is add control. Now I want to add control. So I'll name this function as add control. Let's go back. And then here, now I want to add control. So what I can do is, so I can push this prepare address into this. So I'm just actually returning this form group. And whenever I want to actually add a new one, I'm just actually calling the same method. So we are not repeating the code. I mean, we could have actually just repeated this code twice. So add this here and then add this here. But we have to also make sure that in case there are some validations, we have to make those like at both places, which where we can make a mistake, right? And let's change this button to from submit to add address. And let's be ready. So you can see already the address has an array, city, street number, zip code, city, street number, zip code, and you can add as many as you want. I mean, keep adding, and you can see you have the data below. Probably you can like wrap it inside a card and display it nicely that it's a home address. This is like office address. This is blah blah address. This is my relative's address. Whatever you want to do, right? So you can actually have multiple addresses here. Let's format this and let's do one more thing. So now we have added, what in case we added some extra and we want to remove it? So of course, dynamic forms allows you to do it, and let's see how easy is that, or how flexible the API is. So here what I will do is I will add a div, but before I add a button, for adding a control, I mean I can just be anywhere in outside the form and I will be able to do it. But in case I want to remove a single control, I mean, if I want to remove everything, that's another API. We will see that, and you can place it anywhere you want. But let's say if you want to add remove a specific control, you have to have access of the index, because we are going to remove this control or remove this form from a particular location in your array. So I need this index value. So here what I will do is I will be between this uh, div. Right? So I'll say, okay, hey, let's, this should be button, right? So let's close this button, and okay, so we have an extra, and let's call it as delete address, and we will use this index, and let's call this remove address, right? Then controlled, so remove address. Let's go back, and here we call remove address with an index value, and we have a API called remove at. So once you pass the index value to this, it will just remove the control from that particular array. So let's try this out. So let's add, you can see already have delete address. Let's add one more. So you have two, and let's some data, and let's delete this one. You can see it actually takes care of the index value, so you don't have to, in case like someone wants to delete it from middle of the array, that's absolutely fine. You will not miss the data which was already typed. So this is how flexible the API is. But let's say I add a lot of it, right? So we have a lot of it, and then we decide, hey, I just want to remove everything and do it again probably. So here I can add one more button, and I can say this is reset control. In this case, a reset address. In this case, I don't need an index at all. So here, let's go and use reset address, and we can just call the clear method. Let's see how it behaves. click, reset, and that's it. You see all the addresses are gone, even the first one. I mean, you can actually just put some flag saying, okay, in case this is, you can actually do something like this. So you can say address dot controls dot length. Let's say here, I can make sure that this button is visible, star or enabled. So I can say, okay, this is disabled in case my address dot controls dot length is equals to 0. So I should not be able to reset because it's not 0. Yeah. So now it's actually disabled. Click on address, and now we have to. Now we can reset. And on reset also, you can actually just after reset you can call the add address, right? So you can actually just trying to say that you can actually handle it in multiple ways. Even for delete one, you can also put a flag that okay, it should only delete. It should be only enabled, in case we have index greater than 1. So here I can just say okay, hey, disable this button in case index is greater than 1, or it should be other way around, right? Yeah. Is less than 1, not greater than 1, right? So yeah, cool. Let's add one, and then you can see okay, I won't be able to delete this one, and then I can just delete. So rest of them can be removed, and you can actually just probably, yeah, I mean, just enable or show this button once you have more than one control. So yeah, that's the way you want to handle. I mean, I'm saying the APIs are very flexible here. So now we know how to do form group, how to do form array. Let's go back. So the advantage of adding this function was actually I can just comment this out and nothing breaks. And here I can just say, okay, let's go back to our form group. Here also I'll just disable this form array. I'll keep this just in case someone wants to refer these examples, and keep these buttons as well. So let's move back and uh, enable the array one from here to here. Sorry, not the array one, but the group one. And then we can call load profile again because it will work now. We don't have any array anymore, so it should work. Yep, we are back. So this is the data which we have, and now we can actually make API call to update this form in case you want to. So let's do submit. So here I'll just put a button, and we will call this button as date. Here I'll say keep this button as disabled in case this profile form dot should have put if it is 30. Yeah. So give me an error. So it's dirty. It should be dirty and valid. It should be dirty and valid. Invalid. Sorry. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. No. Just wondering why I'm getting. Okay. Let's go back and just verify if everything is perfect. Update profile. Remove this, and yep, this is disabled. And now let's make the service call. So we have our user service. Let's verify the update profile because user update. So this is update is should be a patch call, a put call. So it's a put call. So it requires the user ID and then rest of things. Okay, cool. So but we don't have user ID. We do. We are actually getting it from the API, but if you see, we are not. We will not get this in our control. Let's see. So let's write this function. So here on ng submit should call update file. Let's see what data we have here. So I can say this dot profile form dot. Let's first try value because I want to actually show one more thing. So let's see. So here we will submit update profile. Oh, we are getting ID. Cool. So I okay. But let's see an example. So here what I will do is I will also create an ID control. So let's do that. So here I'll because we already have an ID, but we are not binding it. So here let's bind this actually. Let's bind mat form field. So I can show you the usage of get value versus get raw value. And let's do that placeholder ID, and this is ID. And here what we'll do is we'll say, okay, this is the default value and has uh, okay, so it's value, which is this, and it has disabled flag, which is true. So remember, we are passing right now. We have seen we can say a new form control, just string value, and it works. We can do this array and then string value or the default value and then validations. We can actually pass it as an object. You can say value and disable. These are two properties which is accepted. We can see there is nothing else. So we can pass default value and whether we want this control to be disabled or not. So you can see we have the value, but yeah, this control is disabled. And let's update our profile. And you can see an interesting thing has happened. You don't have the value of the control which is disabled. So this example just wanted to show you that, okay, in case you have some disabled control, your profile form dot value will never give you that value. So it's always preferred that you should use get raw value, which is a function. So it's not a value, it's not a property, it's a function. And you should always prefer get raw value just in case you are enabling, disabling a lot of control and you want all the values to be available. Click on update profile and now you got your ID. So we got all the properties which we needed, and now we already have our service ready, which says, okay, update user, go ahead and update this one. As I mentioned, I'm using just the data from user ID 2. And now we can actually just go ahead and say, hey, this dot, and let's see if this update returns anything. So do they? So we can say update a user, and yes, I think it returns the value. It returns the updated value. So I can say, okay, this dot uh, user service dot update profile, update user, and just make sure to use get raw value. Let's do console.log to see the updated data, right? And what we wanted to do is, you can also see this, right? You can pass here. You can actually make this as URL, dynamic URL. So you can use string interpolation here, and then rather than passing two, I can put curly brackets here and a dollar symbol. And now I can say this is user.id. So let's go ahead and verify this. If my put call works, and update profile, and we have this one. So you can see this is line number 106, which means after the API has been called. And let's change something. So I'll say not David Morrison, but David Warner, right? And let's update, and you can see the value is updated to David Warner, not Morrison anymore. And you can verify network that you have a put call. So here it is. So you can see your payload, you can preview your data, you can see the response, and you can see there's no email ID, username and password, because we are not passing it. So it will just like return the same data which we are passing basically. Most of the fake APIs, they don't even validate the data. So whatever you pass, it's just gets accepted. For example, I can show you that. Let's remove this, and I mean, you can just try this out. I mean, you can just pass anything and it will work. Great. So this is how you can actually do dynamic controls, dynamic forms. You can actually add anything you want, anything you don't want to. I mean, you can also actually enable disable forms dynamically. So let's see that example. I'll just add a button, and let's say button, and here I'll call this button as enable disable edit toggle it. Let's see. So here I'm just creating a function called toggle edit, and let's see what we can do using this one. So here I'm saying if it is enabled, call disabled, or we can actually just do it using this file uh, enabled, then disable or enable in the way you want to. If you prefer if else, just use prefer if else, or just use this one. So here, click on enable. So you can see all the controls are disabled now. Click again, and then you can see it is enabled. So you can actually control that as well. So whatever you want to do. There are some more APIs which exist. You can actually also add validations, but this is something which is already covered in my Angular Getting Started course on Free Code Camp. So feel free to actually go ahead and see that. And I think we are done for today. So we saw how we can create, how we can use Form Builder API to create dynamic controls, how you can add, remove controls, and yeah, also we saw how you can add, edit the forms. So that's it for the day, and we will not have any stream tomorrow. Maybe I can do once on Saturday, and then we'll continue on Monday, and then probably we'll do few more streams, because the topics which I wanted to explore was uh, I think I wanted to explore component store, signals in few more APIs about signals. So we'll see some example probably during. Hey Pankaj, thank you. And yeah, see an example during showing cart. Maybe we wanted to actually do use those APIs here. Maybe let's see. But yeah, so we'll see some more APIs of signals, component store, and then we will wrap this stream and go on to another stream. So I wanted to learn analog. So which is a very cool new meta framework for Angular. So and we can learn it together on the stream. So thank you, see ya, bye bye, and good night, good evening.